Mobutu was made his chief of staff with the rank of lieutenant colonel. Both appointments, Nzogola Untalaja observed, were ill-advised. Londola did not have the qualifications to manage a modern army. As for Mobutu, Lumumba made a serious blunder based on his political naivety and his overconfidence with regard to commanding the loyalty of people in his entourage. He ignored the well-founded rumors about Mobutu's ties to the Belgian and American intelligence services. In appointing Mobutu to this sensitive position, Nzogola Ntalaja wrote, Lumumba had unwittingly chosen his own Judas. Antoine Gizenga, Lumumba's loyal deputy prime minister, saw that Mobutu had wormed his way into the appointment, and that once he had it, he made little effort to go and see the soldiers and tackle their concerns. He sought to intervene. While Mobutu was out of the capital on an unofficial trip, Gizenga gave his post to Maurice Mpolo, the Minister of Youth and Sports. When Mobutu returned to Leopoldville, he was furious at the change and went to Lumumba to demand the rollback. But complained Gizenga, Lumumba was too sentimental and didn't perceive the danger that roamed around him. Lumumba had a weakness for Mobutu. Gizenga noted with frustration. He regarded him as his son, a sweet lamb, and was affected by his fears. Instead of supporting Gizenga's intervention, Lumumba instructed Mpolo to leave the army and return to his ministry. Mpolo did. Mobutu then ordered his arrest, but his soldiers failed to carry out the order. Charmed by Mobutu, Lumumba was giving him, rather than Gizenga, the benefit of the doubt. He was concerned by Gizenga's harsh judgment of his new chief of staff and asked him to be more understanding. Nkrumah was determined to do everything possible to support the liberty of the Congo. On 15th July, almost 1,200 Ghanaian soldiers were flown to Leopoldville. 192 more were waiting in Accra for transports, with 156 trucks and 160 tons of stores. By 25th July, Ghanaian troops numbering 2,340 were the largest single national contingent in the United Nations force, which by then totaled 8,396. There were also about 37 Ghanaian police officers in the Congo. Senior Ghanaian ministers and officials visited Congo frequently. But tensions were emerging that had not been anticipated by Nkrumah. The cause was the commander-in-chief of the Ghanaian contingents, Major General Henry Templar Alexander, who had been seconded from the British Army to serve as Ghana's chief of defense. According to the magazine's topic, he was a handsome, whip-cord soldier, slight, but with huge black eyebrows and clipped graying mustache. Alexander was an experienced senior military officer, noted Inderjit Rike, a major general in the Indian Army, who was serving as Amash Kod's military advisor in the Congo. Still, Rike believed that Alexander had little understanding of the politics of peacekeeping, and he looked at the Congo crisis through the prism of imperialism or imperial policing. What he did not seem to understand was that the United Nations was not an impartial power and was not entitled to enforce its will on the Congolese. And since Alexander did not speak French, Lingala, Kiswahili, or Kikongo, he had to rely on English speakers to obtain any sense of what was going on. Alexander avoided the British embassy, apparently on the grounds that it was too closely linked with colonialism. Instead, he chose to seek logistics support from the American embassy. In African Tightrope, a memoir, Alexander later wrote about his 2 years as Nkrumah's chief of staff. He drew attention to his close contact with the US Embassy, including with the thin as a reed Claire Timberlake, the new American ambassador. On his arrival in the Congo, recorded Alexander, I was seen immediately by Mr. Timberlake, a man to whom I took an immediate liking. And the liking was mutual. On 15th July, Timberlake reported to Washington that Alexander was level-headed and broad-gauged. Alexander was also in close contact with the US ambassador in Ghana. Most of the officers of the Ghanaian troops were white, even though it had been 3 years since Ghana's independence. Alexander had failed to reconstitute the Ghanaian units that went to the Congo so that they would be offered by Ghanaians. Alexander displayed deeply held racism. In his memoir, he observed that life to the African is of much less value than to the European. After arriving in July to take up the post of CIA chief of station, Larry Devlin witnessed an occasion in which Alexander stated that the Congolese leadership had not yet come down from the trees. Luckily, noted Devlin, neither Bomboko nor Kanza, who were present, appeared to have heard this offensive remark. An immediate problem caused by Alexander was his decision on 15th July to disarm the ANC troops. This action and Alexander's forceful personality was widely admired by the Western press. From Accra, the British High Commissioner reported to London on Alexander's heroic exploits. It was only because of Alexander, he said, that mass murder and looting had been prevented in Leopoldville, and that Alexander single-handed had prevented a huge mob from lynching someone. It was particularly impressive, he said, because Bunche was not backing him. Bunche, he added, though he may be a first-class mediator, is evidently quite useless as a man of action in a situation like this. He spent all his time wandering between his hotel room and the American embassy for comfort and Coca-Cola, while Alexander moved from one trouble spot to another. This was a British ambassador the British ambassador to Ghana, then reporting back to their own London office too. But Lumumba and his government were appalled by the disarming of the ANC. So too were Amashkeld and Bunche. All the more so since Alexander was not a member of the United Nations Command. To sideline Alexandra, Amashkeld and Bunche, all the more so since Alexander was, to sideline Alexandra rather. I jumped the line there. So Amashkot quickly named Bunche as the acting force commander in the Congo. On Bunche's own recommendation, in addition to his position as special representative, Bunche continued in this role until the arrival of Major General Carl von Horn to act as the supreme commander of the United Nations force in the Congo. Bunche insisted that the weapons of ANC soldiers be handed back to them. When Bunche returned to New York, obviously very tired, he had a good deal to say about Alexander. This rather swashbuckling soldier, he said with evident irritation, thought that he had answers to the problems of the Congolese army and the maintenance of order, and he had taken a strong but mistaken position on the question of disarming the Congolese troops. Speaking to Rajeshwar Dayal, the Indian diplomat who was preparing to go to the Congo to take over Bunche's role of Amashkor's special representative, Bunche warned him that Alexander was a troublemaker. Alexander did not seem to understand. Bunche complained that the United Nations force was a peace force, not a fighting force, and that it could use arms only in self-defense. It was absolutely necessary that United Nations troops could avoid getting into the extreme position of having to shoot Congolese. But Alexander was ambitious. On several occasions, he put himself forward as the ideal man to take responsibility for the United Nations operational activities in the Congo. He was eager to be at the heart of the action and seemed not to be aware of his unsustainability for the post. Moreover, he did not realize that, as von Horn put it, the concept of this military scion of a colonial power being given carte blanche in the Congo was totally unthinkable. Andrew Jane, Ghana's ambassador to the Congo, was increasingly suspicious of Alexander. He sent urgent messages to Nkrumah, warning him about Alexander's intrigue and subversive action. The dislike for mutual. Alexander depicted Jane in his memoir as a black racist and anti-white, virulently anti-Belgian. An absolute priority for Lumumba and Kasavubu was to force the Belgian troops out of the Congo. On 17th July, they gave an ultimatum to Bunche. They would call for Soviet military intervention if the United Nations had not pushed the Belgian troops out of the Congo within 2 days. The ultimatum was set out in a letter which Lumumba gave to Alexander in Stanleyville. Alexander then flew to Leopoldville with Kalushi and radioed Ambassador Timberlake, asking him to meet him on arrival at Njili Airport, together with Bunche and the commander of the Belgian Metropolitan Troops at the airport. Alexander handed the letter to Bunche, observing that the request it contained was impossible. The meeting at the airport was described in detail by Timberlake to the State Department in 18th July in a cable that was copied to the small group of men involved in the developing crisis. So here is what Timberlake sent to the State Department in July 1960. Alexander feels Kasavubu not happy with direction being taken by Lumumba, but seems to be weak and under latter's thumb. Alexander feels Lumumba is irrational, and so does Bunche. I think at very least we are dealing with a man who is temporarily irrational. I talk at length with Bomboko and Kansa, who said they would call cabinet meeting to be held on arrival, Kasavubu and Lumumba, and would meanwhile line up cabinet members they know or might persuade to go against any such ultimatum. Bomboko considers it illegal since it has neither cabinet nor parliamentary approval. The cable reflects the confidence that Timberlake felt in Alexander. It was sent with a high precedence NIACT or night action. NIACT. Like that, NIACT, night action. Which meant that it had to be delivered immediately to the addressee, even in the middle of the night. Some of Lumumba's supporters were concerned about his strategies to remove the Belgians. He is trying to please everyone, complained his deputy, Antoine Gizenga, to Andre Blouin. With his method, we are heading for disaster. Gizenga was grateful for Nkrumah's influence on his leader. Blouin, in turn, was grateful for Gizenga. This man of iron was a loyal friend, she observed. He also saw the situation as it was. His silence was his strong card. He listened and he watched, but he was tenacious. He never forgot his ultimate purpose. Threats to the new government were increasing rapidly on all fronts. Traitors were organizing everywhere. Blouin noted in a memoir, "My country, Africa, in the vice prime minister's office, dossiers disappeared from Gizenga's desk, as well as from mine. I realized my desk was being systematically searched every day. When I locked the drawers with a key, they were callously forced. William Borden, the US ambassador in Brussels, had received the NIACT telegram sent by Timberlake. The next day, he made his first official recommendation and possibly the first official recommendation to this effect made by any American diplomat, politician, military man, or CIA agent, that the US overthrow Lumumba's government. He sent the following cable to the State Department. Lumumba has now maneuvered himself into position of opposition to the West, resistance to United Nations, and increasing dependence on Soviet Union and on Congolese supporters, Chamura, Gizenga, who are pursuing Soviet ends." One sec, I want to sneeze.
Ten things you never knew about the 1999 Constitution. Did you know that the 1999 Constitution was promulgated by the Military Decree 24 of 1999? And to think of it, this 1999 Constitution was never subjected to a referendum.
Did you also know that this 1999 Constitution was written by a selected few that never got the consent of the indigenous nationalities or its representation?
Did you know that after writing the 1999 Constitution, it was hidden from the public until after the inauguration of President Obasanjo in 1999?
Funny enough, this 1999 Constitution was not printed by the government press or any known printers in 1999.
Did you know that the 1999 Constitution created a unitary government as against the projected federal government, and this forged an inefficient, over-centralized government, as well as creating a centralized judiciary whom has never been autonomous?
In all this, did you know that this 1999 Constitution falsely and maliciously claims that the indigenous nationalities willingly handed over their lands and resources to the federal government?
And interestingly, did you know that the 1999 Constitution calls state governors chief security officers, but at the same time centralized all the security agencies and denies these state governors control over any of the security agencies?
And finally, do you know that the illegitimate 1999 Constitution in Section 6, subsection 6C, absolves the government from liabilities regarding rights of the citizens as provided in Chapter 2, making this right not justifiable?
This and many more are the reasons why corruption, unaccountability, incompetence, and insecurity are institutionalized in Nigeria.
Yes. Thank you. I don't even know if the camera actually caught that my sneezing. You know, that's going to be like a big meme. You know what I mean? But let me continue reading the cable. This is how they now plotted that Lumumba must be overthrown. He must be killed. This is the beginning, right? The source. So from that cable, right, let's read on. Only prudent, therefore, to plan on basis that Lumumba government threatens our vital interests in the Congo and Africa generally. A principal objective of our political and diplomatic action must therefore be to destroy Lumumba's government as now constituted. But at the same time, we must find or develop another horse to back, which would be acceptable in rest of Africa and defensible against Soviet political attack. He suggests that US policy might include encouraging the Congolese parliament to repudiate Lumumba. He added that CIA operatives in Brussels would make a number of suggestions through their own channels to Leopoldville and Washington. Just 2 days later, a meeting of the US National Security Council discussed the Congo. In it, Hughes argued that in Lumumba, we were faced with a person who was a who was a Castro or worse. It was safe, added Hughes, to go on the assumption that Lumumba has been bought by the communists. This also, however, fit with his own orientation. Bawden's memoir presents this development as one that was driven by Hughes. But it is clear that he himself had an instrumental role. After the meeting of the NSC, Hughes flew to Brussels for a quick survey and briefed Bawden on the Council's recent decisions. The CIA's attitude towards Lumumba had hardened into enmity. Things fall apart. That is the end of chapter 16. So we now have chapter 17 to go to. Thank you for listening. So I'll keep that safe for us. That's how we're going to finish the reading. We've got some of these books here that we still need to catch up and read. So we are currently on, we just finished page 204. So we would have more from where that came from the next time we have the chance again. So thank you so much, everyone. Let me go kind of get ready for tonight, and hopefully the line will be working better. And we can have phone calls around maybe after, right? Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. And I pray for all of you. I will see you later.
Oshoni, Ajeni, Elebologun ni, Amaniseni ni, Afaimaniseni ni, wọ́n á fi yín sílẹ̀.
Mayegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Mayegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Mayegun ti dé o, ọ̀rẹ́ ará ìlú.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Lórí Facebook, lórí YouTube.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Gbogbo bó ṣe ń lọ ni Mayegun já wa sí.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Àṣírí ọ̀jẹ̀lú kì í bò níbẹ̀ o.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Bó bá ṣe eré, àní Mayegun máa wí.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Ó sì tún ṣe eré, wàá gbọ́ níbẹ̀ o.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
kẹgọ́rọ̀ lẹ́nu o.
Mayegun Diary na ibi number one.
àní Máyégún làwa mọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary na ibi number one.
àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Mayegun ti dé. Mayegun ti dé.
ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Mayegun ti dé.
àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Mayegun ti dé.
lórí Facebook.
Mayegun ti dé.
àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Mayegun ti dé.
lórí YouTube.